Hello, everyone. So, today we are going to be talking about decision making, like an intuitive. Decision making is such a crucial aspect of the intuitive journey. We can change the trajectory of our lives, we can track our divine destiny through active, conscious, and intuitive decision making. To begin this conversation, we'll begin by talking about how, when it comes to decision making from the intuitive lens, we have to first and foremost remember that there are truly no wrong turns. And this might sound a little bit counterproductive, right? To what this whole module is about, which is that we want to make good decisions. We want to make decisions like intuitives. But in order for us to make decisions like intuitives, we have to actually liberate ourselves enough to make decisions that are not impacted by fear. And it is fear of making the wrong decision or doing the wrong thing or not making the right choice that a lot of people get stuck. A lot of people end up in decision paralysis, meaning you freeze. Maybe you don't end up taking action on making a decision for years. Maybe that's the case. Maybe for you, it's days, weeks, right? And eventually, something that I've noticed about people who hold that energy signature of being frozen or continuously feeling paralysis when it comes to decision making and the fear of doing the wrong thing, and thus ruminating and taking a lot of time and, most importantly, energy trying to make a decision. Sometimes they miss the window of opportunity for what either path they could have chosen would have given them. They miss it altogether because they were frozen. And that happens in life sometimes. Sometimes we avoid the very thing we need to do in order to create a stake in the ground. We need to just commit to a decision, right? And we have to trust that when we commit, when we can move beyond the fear of making the wrong turn, we can decide that there is growth and there is learning available in all choices, in all timelines that are available to us. And when we can let go of the fear of making the wrong choice, and we can actually tune into what is guiding us through intuition, may it be, what do you feel most enthusiastic about? That's a really great indicator of a good decision. It's something that you feel enthusiastic about, right? It's us being able to awaken the intuitive senses to make decisions that will lead us to decisions that we can be clear about and that we can learn no matter what. So it's not necessarily about making the right decision because there's a wrong one. All we're doing is sifting through the infinite timelines that are available to us. And so this is what I'm going to call timeline expansion and tracking destiny. And, the idea of timelines, before I ever had a word for it, before I ever had the concept of the quantum mechanics around timelines and there being infinite timelines available to us based off of our awareness, our choice, and our consciousness at the time. Before I had any awareness of that when I was a little girl, I used to contemplate, I used to wonder, I used to be curious about, why is it that I am noticing that all the adults around me do the same thing over and over again every day? I literally had that thought and that question of, why does it seem like, it's like the movie Groundhog's Day. Everybody wakes up and they just do the thing that they're meant to do. There's, wake up, you eat, you go to work, you come home, you eat again, and maybe you watch some TV. Maybe I don't think scrolling on the phone was a thing for me at the time where I was a kid, but yeah, it was mostly like TV, right? That's the sort of mm, normal routine that I would witness in some of my family members. I would witness that cyclical Groundhog's Day pattern. And not even just that, I would notice how going to school, it's like that was also a Groundhog's Day where it's like we're all abiding to the same schedule every single day. Everything is fixed. The teachers do this, they show up as that, and their identity is this thing over and over and over again. And I had the thought when I was younger, before I knew any of this quantum physics stuff, I was like, at any point, someone could just say enough is enough. I could decide to run away. I literally used to have thoughts like that. I would be like, I could run away. That would change life altogether. It would impact my family. It would impact my school. It would impact my life, but at least I wouldn't be doing the same thing over and over again. I'm sure that there is more out there in this world than this thing that I have created a concept of, which is my reality, that this is life. And I had those contemplations about why the adults around me would subscribe to the same thing over and over again, why I was subscribing to it, and why everyone was. And I would fantasize about what it would mean to change a timeline, to disrupt a pattern, to get unstuck out of autopilot and automaton. And now I have words for it, right? But before it was just more so of a noticing. It was more of like an awareness of like, this is the world that I live in, at least in the area that I grew up in. It was very much like that. And there was a lot of societal norms that people subscribed to. And so I preface this all by saying that, none of us are children anymore. And at this point, we are at a level of maturity and a level of our adulthood where we actually have the sovereignty. Because as children, it's like we actually need our parents, our school systems to create enough safety for us to function. We're not making money. We wouldn't be able to protect and provide for ourselves, not in this era of living. We're not taught survival skills. We're not even taught any like rites of passage or indigenous ways of like living close to the earth. We're actually surviving based off of a need to abide by what our schools and abide by what our parents want us to be and the reality that they see is reality and the one that we have to sort of just find our way in and through, right? But the thing is, if you're listening to this right now, then you've realized at this point that you have made some impeccable choices throughout your life that continue to give you more freedom, that continue to give you more independence, more of a flavor of you, the way that you want to traverse this world and how you want to traverse your reality, right? And the thing that's amazing is that it only gets more and more refined. It only gets more and more acutely sensitive and attuned to who you are. The choices get more subtle. The decisions feel deeper. And at the same time, there isn't so much of this pressure. Like I remember that there were phases of my life where there was a lot of pressure around if I don't make things happen, or if I don't make the right choice, or if I don't take control of the situation in some way, I might not be okay. Like I have to usher in courage. I have to summon enough courage to make some active decisions because the trajectory of my destiny depends on me making some really important decisions. And that is the case for many people, no matter where you're at in life, no matter if you have gone through this pattern and you're not really, in those situations anymore where things feel so impactful based off of your decision making. Even if you're sort of past that, it might come back around. And so it's important for us to remember and acknowledge the importance of how making decisions from an intuitive place can change the trajectory of people's lives. And examples of this is work, jobs, where people are spending, your everyday time and energy. What purpose do you serve? Who do you serve? What missions are you a part of? That is something that ends up disrupting people's lives, including my own, completely. And it changes the trajectory of your destiny. Because for some people, maybe you're in the perfect job. Maybe you are in the job that you've been manifesting. Maybe you're already in it, right? And if so, I celebrate that. Or maybe you feel that inside of you, this isn't the cap. You feel like this is perfect for right now. You realize that you're in the job that you are now because it allows you to create a level of safety, right? And regulation in your nervous system by not being in survival. You have your needs met, you're able to take, some trips or go to some events or have experiences with your friends or take care of your health and your self-care to some degree based off of the work that you're in right now. And maybe you know that it's not your forever job, but it is perfect for you right now while you are simultaneously tracking how to be in alignment with destiny beyond this job, like that next level of evolution, right? Or maybe you're watching this video and you're like, holy shit, for years, I have literally years or months or days, I have felt dead inside when I'm at work. I have lost all hope for enthusiasm. I am so disconnected from the people around me. I don't thrive in the environment of my work, and yet I force my body to show up anyways. Maybe for you, you are at your wit's end and your limits. And sometimes it is easier to stay within a job like that when you know what's on the other side, when you know what this is all, serving you towards. It's like, this is the thing that's here now because it's supporting ultimately the next step. But the case where people are in this situation where they've lost all luster for life through most of your time being dedicated to this job and not seeing what's on the horizon, not knowing the next step, not being intuitive about what's next or having the guidance or support to usher you into what's next. It's moments like this where it's most indicative of timeline hopping, quantum leaping. When whether you're talking about a job, a romantic relationship, a home, a geographic location, your environment, a community, a group of friends, a hobby, a way of life, an addiction, a habit around your health, whatever that is no longer in resonance with the you that is emerging now, that is happening now. It might have served you back then. It might have served you a day ago, a week ago, months ago, or years ago. But right now, who I'm talking to is different. Who I'm talking to now is holding a new level of awareness and a new level of sensitivity to be able to feel what is for you and what is not for you. And it's in those moments that you make a brave decision and you change the trajectory of your life. And the simplest example of this is me going to school for advertising and marketing. I went to college and got a bachelor's degree in marketing and advertising, and I got the jobs. I worked at, ironically, I went to Temple University, and my first job was at Karma Agency. So I even then had little like pings from my soul of like these words that I use now in such different ways, like temple, right? Place of worship, or my body's temple, or karma agency, the karma of, me ending up in a place based off of me not knowing my true self, me being in a result of what my parents wanted and a result of my conditioning and my upbringing and the culture that I grew up in, right? I worked at these places, these agencies, and I ended up even getting a job at another agency that was kind of cooler. It was in the music industry, and we were working for really cool artists at the time. And so that was like a level up. And so I was like, wow, I'm climbing the ladder of my career. I'm doing it. I ended up getting a job at an agency that I dreamt of being able to get a job at this place all of college. I used to say, like, if I make it to get a job at this place, I will have made it. If I get a job at this place, I will have made it. I used to say that to myself. I will know that I've made it in life when I get a job at this place. And so I did. And it was like a lower level sort of job. It was like entry level job. And at one point, there was this fork in the road, a timeline split, a quantum leap opportunity because I was asked to join full time. I was asked to be if I wanted to be promoted to the next position up the corporate ladder of this cool job, right? And every logical part of my being said that this is what you've been wanting. This is what you've actually worked so hard for. You're literally getting the offer. They were going to pay good money. I was going to get my own like full desk. And I was going to work my way up. And it would have been, on paper, exactly what I would have wanted. But that decision that I made, when I had no idea what was coming in its place, I had no other offer. I had no idea what I would be saying yes to if I said no to this thing. But I followed my intuition, and that was one of the biggest, most important moments of my life, following an intuitive call that made no logical sense, where my logic could not have made that decision. It was something much deeper in me. It was soul recognition. And the way that I recognized that was by feeling the surroundings of my environment and imagining if I took that timeline, what would my world look like? And what I realized is that my world would look the same over and over again. There would be some moments for happy hours. There would be some moments for, vacation time. But essentially, it would look a lot like what it looks like right now. And what I sensed was that there was more growth for me, even though I had no idea what that would be. I had no idea that I'd end up doing healing, no idea that I'd end up facilitating courses and retreats and coaching. Zero, zip. I had a lot of healing to do myself at that time. And so that is an example of a timeline split. That is an example of a quantum leap because when I took that decision, the quantum leap took me out of my reality so much that the level of growth and evolution and alignment and synchronicity and beauty that I experienced from making that decision, the level of support that I felt from the universe was far beyond the limits of time. So, what I mean by that is like when I quantum leaped, that meant the amount of growth that I would experience as a soul took maybe a year, right? After I left that job and I moved to California and I embarked on this journey. I got Reiki certified. I was also a flight attendant. I'm not going to go too much into these details right now, but I will say that the amount of life that I experienced in such a short amount of time was not equivalent to anything that made logical sense. And for what would have taken me probably 10 years of growth, I was able to grow within a year because of that quantum leap. If I would have stayed and taken the job and been in that office and lived in the same home and frequented the same friends and the same happy hours and the same, clubs and all of the things every weekend, right? It'd probably take me 10 to 15 to 20 years, maybe even an entire life to be able to access the levels of consciousness and awareness and soul recognition and closeness and intimacy with who I truly am. And it took me in a year of making a decision like that. It quantum leaped me out of space and time. It quantum leaped me into a hyper speed portal of evolution. And that's what decisions like this can do for us. I witness it all the time in my clients. I have an example of a dear client of mine who is taking a quantum leap of starting the next level of her business, and that's going to change the trajectory of her life. The people she will impact in the world, the level of reach she will have, the level of joy, pleasure, prosperity, abundance, and alignment, and creative power and enthusiasm about her life and her work, because she's doing the brave thing, right? The courageous thing to do the road less traveled, and really to do something that no one has ever done in the way that she will be doing it, to literally create her own real estate in the quantum universe of literally the void, right? Of the cosmos. She's putting her stake in the ground of like, no one's ever created this. I'm creating this, and I'm putting, up a sign, in the quantum real estate that says sold. I'm taking up this territory of the quantum universe, and I'm going to create from this place. And I'm going to invite people who are aligned and meant to receive from her creations, by first and foremost making the choice to go first. And that's what quantum leaps require for you to do. No one's coming to give you permission. It is helpful to have coaches and guides and facilitators and experiences that support you to make big decisions like this, and to help you uncover what decisions like this might even be, to uncover the layers of you that are underneath the surface so that you can access this level of enthusiasm for your life, right? There's all of that guidance, there's all of that help available, but ultimately, no matter what, the only permission that you need is your own. And my invitation for you is that, like, for some of us, I talked about the different levels, the different varying degrees of how important decisions are for us right now. You know, maybe you're at the place where the decisions are kind of subtle, where it's like amazing timeline versus in another amazing timeline versus I'm going to grow no matter what, whether I'm here or there, because I'm in alignment, I'm aware, I've healed, I've integrated, parts of myself. I'm in touch with my intuition. I'm guided. I have a direct connection to my soul. I have a direct connection to my higher guidance. And it's really just good timeline after good time after good timeline that I have to choose from. There's not a lot of risk in that, right? There's a level of trust that you've developed that there's no wrong turns. Or maybe you're someone that, you know, has some decisions that you are about to make or that you have made that are impacting your life in a significant way, but that aren't going to change like your life in a huge way where like all of a sudden you're leaping of like, oh my God, my entire reality is about to shift. Like the people, the place, the things, everything about me, inward and outwardly, is going to change. And maybe for you, that's exactly where you're at. Maybe for you is everything on the outside and the inside is about to change. And I have gone through all of these different layers, and they are a spiral. It's not like you go through like the more dense layer and then eventually you get to the top layer, right? It's not really like that. It's more of like life is cyclical and life is seasonal, and like different varying degrees of decisions are going to come up. I had to make some life-changing, quantum leaping decisions when I was first starting off my spiritual awakening journey. I will say now that my decisions are quite subtle. I know that I'm in alignment. I know that I am very resourced and have the tools energetically and emotionally and mentally and spiritually to be able to take any turn and be myself, because home is where I make it. Home is wherever I am in any given situation, and reality is a reflection of my inner state. But that takes a lot of wielding and a lot of development and a lot of trial and error to be able to actually feel that level of embodiment about your choices. But that doesn't mean that a year from now, months from now, 2 years from now, I don't know, that I might not have some drastic life-changing decisions to make that will change the trajectory of my life all over again, whether it be about relationship, whether it be about family, children, whether it be about geographic location, whether it be about my work, my purpose, my dharma, right? So it's not like we transcend any levels of these sort of choices. It just means that they're cyclical, and they will come around when they're meant to. So I'm going to tell a few more stories just to illuminate, you know, through the mythology of my own life, how really intuitive decisions have changed the trajectory of my life and have allowed me to meet you in this exact moment now as the version of me now. Because had, you know, anything potentially been different, had I not made certain decisions, it's hard to say whether or not I would be having this exact conversation with you. Would it mean that I wouldn't have ever created this course? Maybe it would mean that you would have seen this 2 years ago. Maybe you would have seen this 3 years ago. Maybe you and I and our energies would have never really aligned to be able to meet each other in this place. Maybe we would have never magnetized each other had some of the decisions that I had made in the past been different. And yet here we are, right? It's a result of decisions that I have made that have gotten me to this exact conversation as the me now with the now you in this moment. And that is when you start thinking like an intuitive. That is when you start living from a quantum lens where you see how the present moment impacts the past and the future and the present all the time. And that you can literally change the trajectory of your life by a simple dial switch of your consciousness or awareness, or by repatterning the beliefs you have about yourself and reality, by making one courageous leap off of the proverbial cliff and being able to witness a new level of faith because you were caught by the hand of the universe. These are initiations. They are initiations with the universe. And what they all have in common is that in order for you to quantum leap into a new timeline, into a new reality altogether, most of the time, it's courage that is going to be the necessary component for that to happen. You are, as a mystic, as a modern mystic, going to be walking in the dark a lot. You are going to be walking in the dark and holding a lantern and finding your way through life and through your own intuition and through your own relationship to God and the universe by direct experience. And maybe there's some people there with you. Thank God, to some degree, we have each other. Thank God there's spaces like this where other people get to meet, in this way, traversing similar things and similar contemplations about life. But maybe there's some roads that you're going to take that are so less traveled that it's just you. Maybe you're going to have to walk alone sometimes. Maybe you're going to have to walk through the dark. Maybe you're going to have to be blind through that walk. But eventually you will find the light at the end of the other end of the tunnel. And eventually you just paved the path. And eventually you will realize that you paved a path for others. You were able to walk through the dark so that others don't have to. And that is what a lot of us here as modern mystics, artists, healers, guides, facilitators, mystics, lovers, whatever archetypes you consider yourself, magicians, awakening people, remembering people. That's why we're all here. Because eventually our path is going to create trails of remembrance for others. Even when you're not trying, you have that impact more than you know. The frequency of someone who has awakened to their own divinity and their own power is so powerful energetically. It ripples and impacts people who pretend not to see you. It impacts people around you, even when they don't tell you that you're doing so. And sometimes you get feedback and sometimes you don't. Doesn't mean that you're not making ripples. So remember that. And so that's my little preface to share about 3 more stories about how decision making really changed the trajectory of my life and how I chose some really important timelines. So, for me, my intuition speaks a lot about geographic locations. I'm someone who's been very nomadic. I've lived in many different places and for good reason. Not to say that that's the only way that you can learn is through moving or through being in many different places. Like that might not be the way that your intuition is guiding you. That might not be the way that you're meant to learn. But for me personally, it's been a lot about branching out from the comfort of my home. It's been about branching out and going to places that I've never been and trusting that things would unfold. Until now, at this point, I can do that with so much ease and so much grace. I trust that it always unfolds in magical ways where I used to need to build a level of resilience. Because back then, right, I wasn't sure how it would go. I wasn't sure if my intuition would guide me once I get to a place. But time and time again, I have now the capacity to know and understand and feel that that is the truth because I've lived it so much. And so, because of that, now I can come back and say that it works. Whether we're talking about a relationship, we're talking about a geographic location, a job, a project, um, artistry that wants to come through you, a business, whatever that is, a men's group or a women's group you want to start, it doesn't matter. Whatever we're talking about, it's about taking leaps. And so for me, like a few leaps that I took, that were really important was one, deciding to put out there my first really big retreat. And this took place in Sedona, Arizona. I met actually some people in this course because they came to the retreat. And the thing is, when I created that, I just put out the signal. I didn't know who would sign up. I didn't know what soul contracts were awaiting me in that retreat. I didn't know who would be coming. I didn't know if anyone would be coming at all. But I knew that I got a direct idea and a direct download of information from my intuition. Call it God, call it higher self, call it the cosmos, where I was given an exact plan of what this retreat would be. It was 5 days under 5 elements through the 5 bodies. And I saw it so clearly, it was like a zip file of information that this is what we want you to do. This is where spirit is guiding you. You need to gather people in Sedona, Arizona specifically, and you need to do a 5-day retreat where each day is through a different element. So earth, water, air, fire, and ether. And so how does that equate to the human experience of earth, physical body, water, emotional body, air, mental body, fire, the spirit, and ether, space? So I did that. And I intuited the right people who were meant to facilitate their parts of the retreat because I was not meant to teach all of that on my own. I wasn't ready to do so at that point. And that's the truth. I called in a lot of beautiful helpers and guides to help me along in order to create a retreat like that. And I learned a lot along the way. And to be honest with you, it's like, gosh, when I look back on that, I say that was a quantum leap. I now can facilitate retreats because I went through the the blind faith and the clunkiness of that first retreat. I had to go through it. The only way out was through. And boy, will I say that that was clunky for me. There were moments where I felt awkward. There were moments where I didn't know what the hell I was doing. There were moments where I was completely taken away by the level of responsibility that wasn't aware of. There were moments where I didn't have the right things to say. Was that a bad timeline? Because I had a difficult situation, a difficult, experience at times? No, because there was a balance of beauty. There was a balance of magic in witnessing how, even though I was having my own experience, other people that attended the retreat, other facilitators received so much medicine from the experience. And so did I. But my medicine at that point was some, initiations. I had to go through it. I had to go through the clunkiness of like not being the best facilitator I could be like now, right? Or who I'll even be 10 years from now. But it was necessary. And now, because of that, I've facilitated more retreats and I've gotten super comfortable doing that. Now, the level of facilitatorship I can bring into a space is different because I went through the initiation of that first retreat. So that was a quantum leap for me. That was an important decision to take an intuitive calling that I got literally on one day when I had COVID, for God's sake. I had COVID and I got a download from my intuition because I was resting. Go figure, right? Like we learned that when your nervous system is regulated, when you're in rest and digest, when you're calm, when you're not dysregulated, that's when a lot of intuition comes through. And so I did the thing. I learned the harder ways. I earned a lot of wisdom throughout the experience. I forgave myself for a lot of elements and I learned from it. I promised what I would learn and integrate after the experience. And I also celebrated what I was celebrating from the experience and celebrated how much courage it took me to do that in the first place. And now it's like that changed the trajectory of myself as a facilitator. And the thing is, before I ever even started doing retreats, one of my astrologists literally told me that it is in my chart that retreats are a part of my dharma in this lifetime. It's written in the stars. And so before I ever even facilitated my first retreat, someone told me that that would be coming. And that's destiny. And that is how we track destiny. So another decision that I made that changed the trajectory of my life in some way was when I was living in Costa Rica. I was living in Costa Rica at the time, and I had already made a logical, rational decision because the mind has limits to what it can perceive of the future, of where spirit might be guiding you, because it's using logic, it's using rationality, it's using the information and the historical evidence of what has happened. It doesn't know the infinite possibilities that are potentially available when we open ourselves beyond just mind. But I had made the mind conscious decision that I wasn't leaving Costa Rica for a while. I was good. It takes a lot to, work with the visas and move and travel across the country. And I made a decision that I wasn't leaving. I was there for a good while. And one night I was laying in my bed randomly and I heard clairaudiently the voice that said, it was my own voice. It was a clairaudient message from my own inner self, my own higher self saying, book a flight to LA. You need to book a flight to LA. And it was one of those things where when I look back, it made no fucking logical sense for me to hear a voice that said, book a flight to LA and then do it the same night. Like, I don't even know if I would do that now. But at the time, there was something moving through me that I wasn't moving myself. And that is key. I wasn't in the driver's seat of making that decision. Something was moving through me. I picked up my phone and I booked a flight to LA. I booked it, got the confirmation at 1:11 a.m. angel number. And I said, okay, I guess I'm doing this. That makes sense. I could maybe facilitate a retreat while I'm there, go see friends. I know that other people are going to be there. Like I started to create reasons for why. But the thing that sparked me to go to LA was not a reason. It was a calling that was beyond logic. It was just a knowing, a message of book a flight to LA with no other whys. I didn't know why. I could create the why, but even if I created the why from the mind, it wouldn't really be an accurate reflection of the whys that I discovered only when I was in the timeline, only when I said yes to the timeline, only when I decided to quantum leap. And so upon arriving to LA, only a few days in, I get a random email from the producers of Bling Empire. It is a top 10 TV show on Netflix, and it is about, rich, crazy rich Asian people, but in real life, in LA. And they asked me to come facilitate a retreat, a conflict resolution conversation and Reiki, even though like I just don't think that they actually knew exactly what Reiki was or how that would pan out for the scene. However, they hired me as a Reiki healer. They hired me to facilitate conflict resolution and to bring the cast back together because there was conflict and they weren't speaking. There were some members of the crew that weren't speaking to each other because of a falling out that they had. And this was real. And this was actually happening in real life. I got that message when I was in LA after I got the download in Costa Rica to book the flight to LA. And I chose intuitively the dates that I would go. I never knew that I'd get an invitation like this. I never knew that, right? And so what's crazy and quantum is that I made the assumption that they invited me because I actually was a healer for one of the cast members prior to her going on the show, Kim Lee. And I also worked on her mom. I did energy work for both of them when I used to work out of studio in Los Angeles. And so wouldn't it make sense that like Kim recommended me as a healer and that's why they're inviting me, right? But when I talked to the producer, I asked, did Kim recommend me? And he goes, what? You know Kim? That's even better. He was like, no, I found you on Google. And I'm like, what? And so he found me at random, but is it really random? No. No, no, no. These are all soul contracts. These are all destiny checkpoints. And my presence in that show changed the timelines and trajectories of the relationships of the people in that show. And the people on that show changed the trajectory of my life in certain ways. I got a lot of clients that I would have never met unless I was on that TV show. I had a lot of cool experiences because I ended up dating for a little bit in real life, one of the people on the cast, and I took him to his first sound bath. He introduced me to Shaman Durek and the Princess of Norway, Shaman Durek's now I think wife or fiance, and had a really cool experiences. It was a really fun time in my life of feeling like, whoa, lots of glam, right? And I was really seen in a different way at that point. And they needed me to film immediately. Like I was filming, I think 4 days after we got on that phone. What if I never listened to my intuition to book that flight to LA? What if that would have changed my ability to get to LA in time for the filming? What if I would have never even received the email invitation had my energy not been in LA? What if the quantum universe could not have conducted the energetics the way that they did without my presence in LA? I don't know. I don't know what would have happened. All I know is what did happen, and it was aligned. But I know this, if I hadn't listened to my intuition in the way that I did, I wouldn't have been prepared in the same way as I was for that opportunity in the exact way, and I wouldn't have shown up in the exact way that I did. Had I filmed at a later time, right? Maybe the guy who I ended up dating on the show and who we went on a first date on the TV show, maybe he would have been, not single at that point. It would have changed the trajectory of us having that little season of getting to know each other, right? And me having a second episode on the show. So everything worked out the way that it did because I followed my intuition. Simple as that. And I think it's important to remember of like, if I don't listen to my intuition, what could I potentially be missing? And a lot of the time people don't make decisions. They don't step outside of the limitations of what the mind can predict is probable. There is probability, like that's how the mind works. It works off of what is probable and statistically and historically evident. But the intuition can come out of left field. It's not the mind. It is spirit and it is connected to the web of all things and the Tao. It's the current of life. My presence impacted those people on the show, undoubtedly. Their presence and that TV show impacted my life indefinitely. The people I connected with through that show, new clients, right, were both impacted indefinitely. It is God, universe, conducting the orchestration, the divine web of all things. And our only job is to be in alignment with it. Our only job is to listen and stay open and be in harmony with the current. And so my last quantum leap decision story is a more recent one. Only happened last year. Ooh, I have chills. I have chills. So I had moved to Sedona, Arizona. Sounds so funny. Yeah, it all, for me, my intuition really works through me in places. And just remember that for you, like, it might not be the same. You might be able to have infinite timelines and infinite evolution and growth and opportunities in the same exact geographic location that you are now. So just don't take it literally, what I'm sharing, right? But just feel the energy of what it means to listen and then act on it, because that's what I'm trying to really illuminate here in this storytelling. So yeah, I was living in Sedona, Arizona. I got the download to live in Sedona, to go there for the first time. I didn't know anyone there really, and I had never gone because when I was in LA, I got the message to go to Sedona. Sedona chapter is over at this point. I lived there for about 8 to 9 months, and I am now called back to LA, at least for a few months. And I had, oh my gosh, that was actually when I started the first iteration of the Way of Intuition, or at least got the idea for it. And so my goal was to go to LA and really be in communion with the universe and ask myself how this course would unfold, what would need to be in this course, how would I promote it, how would I get people to join? I've never done something like this. It's my first course. That was an intuitive hit to create it, the first iteration of it. And I knew I wanted to be in LA for it because I called it the Modern Mystic Initiation. And I felt that at that point, I had lived in places like Sedona. I had lived in the highest mountain range in Costa Rica, where there's literally one restaurant and it's more like a village. I've lived in Bali and all of these different places that are like spiritual meccas, and a lot of people live outside of like the norm. But I wanted to go to LA because I wanted to see how spirit is everywhere. And you don't have to live in the Himalayas or the mountains or the desert or remote places in order to have a very deeply spiritual experience. You can have a deeply spiritual experience in a city, at your job, at work, with your family, at things that are actually very normal and mundane. You bring the magic to the mundane. And so I decided that I was going to do this in LA because I wanted to be where I thought a lot of modern mystics are. And so I was in LA with the intention for developing the Way of Intuition. And one of my best friends invited me to the birthday party of a sister that I'd never met. And I went to this sister's birthday party, and it was like so immaculate. It was really, really beautiful. And I met someone there, someone I now call a friend. And he was the first person that ever said that he was from Colorado, and he was curious if I'd ever thought of coming to Colorado. And it was that divine angelic messenger at that point, at that party. I just met him. He happened to be in town for other reasons and then got to go to this party, that I was like, huh, I recognize that as truth. I've never thought to go to Colorado in my entire life. And at the same time, I was there developing the Way of Intuition and promoting it in LA. But where I wanted to be to actually deliver the modules was in a place where my nervous system got to relax. I was staying in Beverly Hills at the time, and it just wasn't a place that I felt conducive for my energy. And for some people, that might be where your energy thrives. But for me, I thrive in mountains. Yeah, I'm a mountain girl and an ocean girl, but I gravitate a lot towards mountains, and it's actually part of my human design. So going back to work with Endon, like, there's literally environments that our human design are predispositioned to. And so mine is mountains. And so when he said Colorado, I was like, well, let me be with that, you know? And so time went on a little bit, and every time I would close my eyes and meditate and think about where do I want to be for this course, I would see snow. And I was like, well, Colorado has snow. And so I texted my friend, the one woman at the time that I knew lived in Colorado, and I said, hey, do you know anyone renting out their space? I have a calling to go to Colorado for the first time, Boulder specifically. And she literally says, I just decided that I'm going to Costa Rica and I'm just putting out the listing for my sublet, my rental. So my friend that I reached out to happens to be leaving the country and needs to find someone to rent her place. And so that's what I do. That's where I gave a lot of the calls of the last iteration of the Way of Intuition. And so I meet beautiful community in Boulder, and I feel for the first time that I feel very met by the people around me, more so than I felt in other places. But was it the chicken or the egg? Is it because it's me and people are a reflection of where I'm at and I'm meeting people in a different frequency? Or is it really the place, the chicken or the egg? And it doesn't matter. But at that season, I was ready to be in Boulder and I was surrounded by the right people. And then I have a training in Costa Rica, so I need to leave. And it was a decision for me to, really big decision for me to come back to Boulder and call it home, at least for the foreseeable future, and ground. And I announced that to my last course, and I announced it to a lot of friends at the time who knew me as someone that was traveling and nomadic a lot. And it was a big deal for me to say to the universe, I don't need to wander in order to find myself. I don't need to travel everywhere in order to be spiritual. I don't need to discover myself by having new experiences everywhere. What would it mean to root? What would it mean to be in one place and let life meet me there? What would it mean to magnetize rather than act and go outside of myself to find the keys, which were necessary at the time? But I wanted to play a different game with the universe. I wanted to test out magnetism, which is actually a very feminine quality to say, instead of being on the offense, instead of being directive and having that pointed arrow, what if I just sit in the stillness of my being? What if I just take care of myself, tend to my roots, and see how life brings me whatever it's meant to bring me? And I never met my partner at the time. That first winter last year, when I moved to Colorado and lived there for like 5 months, I met my partner when I left Boulder for a few months, did travels around Costa Rica and LA and Mexico, facilitated some retreats while I was there. And it was in my decision to come back and root in Boulder that I met my partner the first week, because a divine sister of mine invited me to her partner's birthday party, another birthday party, and I met my partner now. And that's changed the trajectory of my life. It is one of the best partnerships I have ever been in. It is a result of deep healing around attachment styles. It is around deep healing around my relationship to men and the masculine, and my relationship to my own femininity. It was a deep revelation of how to be in a secure, functioning relationship that's healthy, that's conscious, where I feel genuinely met, that's inspiring, that lifts me up, where I feel so held in my feminine. And that's not to say that I have any idea that this is forever, but it is right now, and it is for the foreseeable future. And I'm happy to be in the relationship that I am. So honored and so grateful. And so when we track destiny and look at how one step led to the next, right? For me, it was hearing a random stranger who is now still my friend a year later. We just talked, I just saw him. But he was once a stranger. Now he's a deep friend of mine, a brother. He pinged me as an angel about Colorado. I pinged the next angel about where do I stay. She says, come here. I stay there. I deliver my course. I go do the things I was going to do, which was facilitate retreats and do one of my Tantra trainings in Costa Rica. And then at that point to say, I'm going to root and I'm done running. I'm done meeting life everywhere else. What if life meets me where I decide to be? What happens when I put that stake in the ground? And so I did. And it brought me my partner. It brought me some of the sweetest community. It brought me so much. And at the same time, there's still an understanding that this is probably not my end all be all place. It is the right now place. And it was the place for me in this current season of my evolution. And so it's so important to remember that decisions will meet you at certain points of growth and evolution on your path. And then you'll make new decisions. Your intuition will call you to the next thing where you're going to grow, or the next soul contract that you're meant to have or embark on and learn from. All of this is for our growth. All of this is for a return to faith. All of this is for a return to trust. And all this is a return to more joy, more bliss, more abundance, more prosperity, more beauty, more impact, more depth and meaning. It's all leading you to more of your true self, more of your divine self, more of a soulful way of living. And that is why, my friends, decision making is an integral part of the way of intuition, because it is through making decisions that I've witnessed have changed my life, that are important, that I get to say now how important it is that we continue to stay conscious of where our intuition is guiding us. Is it to build that business, create that thing, make that post? Is it to reach out to that friend? Is it to go on that date? Is it to go to that event? Is it to take a trip to that place? Is it to say, I'm putting it all on red? Like, it's all going to feel like a gamble. It's all going to feel like a risk. It's going to feel like walking through the dark. But there are no wrong turns and there's only growth, and you become more resilient for it. I've made decisions, guys, that didn't end up with all this magic. I have made decisions that caused me in 1 week to get bit in the face by a dog, get robbed twice, 2 nights in a row, and get COVID and miss a flight all in the same week. So there's decisions that also evoke chaos and timelines that are less favorable. But is it a bad timeline? I still learned, I still grew, but I have said before in this course that intuition will take you through routes where you get to learn through more grace. I really believe that. And there are some ways of learning that take getting bruised and battered and learning the hard way, because sometimes we don't wake up until it becomes that glaringly obvious and intense. And there's medicine to that too. So choose your medicine, right? We're going to learn no matter what, and there's no wrong turns. But I hope that this has been helpful for you as an introduction before we get into some practices that give us practical ways to make good decisions in our lives. How do we get in tune with where our intuition is guiding us? How would we even know what the higher timeline is, or where we get to avoid getting bruised and battered? How do we know? Because we don't. Essentially, it's like we are not playing God. We are not playing creator. There is a mystery. This is a mystery. All of it is a mystery. And we are just learning humbly through it. But when you become more intuitive and when you become more of a Jedi and a magician in your own life, you can navigate reality with more clarity and refinement and subtlety and awareness. You can become aware of timelines before you ever need to touch them. You can see how a timeline is going to go without ever needing to go down it. You become much more of your quantum self that lives outside of time and space. It's the soul self that has the eagle's eye perspective on everything, the all-seeing eye, the overarching view of past, present, future. It's all one, and it's all being impacted simultaneously, and it's all being impacted by where collective is at, because we're all intertwined. So we all impact each other. The state of how others are impacts us and vice versa. The timelines of the earth are impacted by each other. And the timelines that we're choosing, the frequencies that we're holding, it impacts other people's timelines too. And so that is what these practices are going to give you, decision making, like an intuitive practices for you to get more in touch with where your intuition is guiding you and how to make decisions that are essentially impactful and meaningful and helpful and points of growth and hopefully pleasurable and fun and playful and aligned and filled with intimacy and soul family, right? Hopefully it has all of that too. And it can, and it does, and it will. And how to be on track with that.